Welcome to the CTO2CTO podcast, where Chief Technology Officers discuss technology, trends, innovation, and what we do day to day. I'm your host, Lucas Hendrich, CTO at Forte Group. In this episode, I talk with CJ Montano, CTO at MyHockeyIQ. CJ and I discuss considerations for the use of AI in software development and to increase developer productivity, among other things. Here's the conversation. So welcome to the premiere episode of our CTO2CTO podcast. My name is Lucas Hendrich. I'm the CTO at Forte Group, which is bringing you this podcast. I'm here with CJ Montano. He's a friend and colleague, also a board member at Forte Group and a longtime CTO, now heading up his own stealth startup, or maybe not so stealth. He'll tell you a little bit about that. And we're here just to have a conversation about what do CTOs do and what do we face every day, and some of the things that are top of mind for us. Hopefully this won't get too technical, or at least such that anyone else who's not a CTO, we welcome everyone to listen and maybe learn a little bit and let you into our little world as CTOs. So with that, CJ, you want to say a couple words before we start?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. Very kind. Also, this is kind of the first time that Lucas and I sat down and really got after it. So I worked at Forte. My company was acquired by Forte about 10 years ago, and I was lucky enough to help decide on Lucas and bringing in a new CTO and a new generation. And we're excited that Forte is looking to the future and grasping artificial intelligence, data science, and kind of the new era of programming. So, yeah, I guess a little bit about me. I mean, I've been up and down the stack most of my career. I've been in quality assurance, product management. I was a software developer and made my way to Chief Technology Officer, both at Forte Group previous to you, and did it for the last 18 months at another organization, a vertical SaaS company. And technology is a great place to be. I am now endeavoring upon the world of product again, getting back and founding my own company. It's called MyHockeyIQ, and that is in the space of sports management. And I'm sure I'll weave in a couple little nuggets about that company as we have this conversation.
Well, that's exactly, I think, where we're going to go. We'll dive right in. So, one thing that I'm sure many people are almost tired of hearing at this point is how much LLMs are just becoming pervasive and ubiquitous in all parts of life and business. And clearly in software development, there's the trend that I don't think is going away anytime soon, which is the use of LLMs to generate code in your IDE, whether it's suggesting code or writing big snippets that you can then copy and paste into a project. Where do you see that fitting in, I guess, in terms of, you're founding a company right now. I'm sure your hands on keyboard. Are you getting benefits of that? Are you, in my point of view would be, just as a starting point, is it helping you with scaffolding, just getting the project up and running? Maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I think LLMs, generative AI I see it positioned very differently in the commercial software programming space than sort of the startup space. But both of them have one thing in common, and I think that is they create a space to cover gaps in things that your organization is short on. So whether that's founding a company, and yes, I am very much hands-on keyboard. Practically speaking, I'll talk a little bit about MyHockeyIQ. We're building software that is driven, that is 3 dimensions in artificial intelligence, and so we're building that on the Unity platform. I've never written a line of Unity code in my life. I've written lots of lines of code in most of the stacks that you've heard of, but having no experience with Unity, AI, Copilot, ChatGPT has become my best friend. It is not necessarily another developer next to me, but it is something that helps me cover the gaps, right? So that could be as simple as I know basic patterns in software programming, but I don't know how to generate an object on the screen that is 3 dimensions and the best ways to do that. So whether I'm having a conversation with ChatGPT about perspective and what are the best ways to do this, what is the accepted standard, or right there with Copilot and actually generating the pattern, that becomes not only a place for me to accelerate the software development process, but actually as a learning tool for me, who, as you'll come to probably know through this podcast, I am very detail oriented and I like to kind of know all the parts of what's going on both in the business and in the code. And so from that perspective, generative AI and the use of LLMs has been just a godsend.
So as you fast forward a year from now, and now you're scaling up teams and you're bringing on different developers, and clearly you're going to have to bring on people who are less experienced. So how do you think about trusting them with using LLMs to generate code when they may not have the experience and certainly are getting to know the code base for the first time?
Yeah. The simple answer is yes, I would absolutely trust them. Given the shortage of time from the seniors, the more 10x developers around them, we're going to have to rely on that. And I think that the best organizations, we will be one of them, should really embrace that concept of allowing generative AI, Copilot, Whisper, or even just ChatGPT to be part of that process. Here's why. There's 2 things that I'm even noticing. 25 years software engineering experience, writing a new technology stack in Unity. What I'm finding is when I use Copilot, it's giving me recommendations based on the entire code base. And that often triggers in my mind things like, why is it doing it that way? That's not how I would write the code. But it creates inquisition of what's going on in the entire code base as to why that would generate. Right down to one of the things I want to talk about is just small techniques that are being used in Copilot. Like, I don't think people understand that Copilot can be just used as a better IntelliSense. We've had IntelliSense forever, but sometimes I'll start writing code and it'll write out the whole method for me or the whole method signature, and I'll think, I didn't want to do that, but that's interesting. Why did it do that? And I think if you have juniors that have that inquisition, that like want an understanding, then you're going to have really good -1x developers who become 2x, 4x, 5x, 10x developers, because the skill you now need at the junior level is curiosity. I'm not just going to generate code. I'm going to understand why it's generating code based on a code base that probably 15 other 10x developers have written and is probably pretty good code. Yeah. That is where I would be like, embrace it. Allow those juniors to really learn through their curiosity.
Well, I think that can be, there's kind of 2 sides to that coin, right? One side is that you're going to amplify the right patterns.
Exactly.
The potential negative side to that is that there's going to be this last mile problem.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't compile, it breaks, and the more complex that gets, and the more complex the snippet gets that you're getting out of whether it's an LLM or whether it's just any kind of suggestion, that's going to take the 10x developers time to debug. So how do you think about that balance? And is there how is that going to change how we do pull requests? How is that going to change? Is it going to change, or is it just going to become fluid?
It's a good question. I'll get to the maybe process of, pull requests and approval and deployment and things like that. I think it has a different impact on that. When it comes to the last mile compilation, the IDEs have gotten so good. I'm just using VS Code. I'm not even using a full-fledged IDE at this point. And I rarely see, I moved over to Copilot. I was using AWS Whisper for a while, but I rarely see compilation issues, and it does interpretation in real time, so it gives you the squiggly line. It tells you this, I can't do this. So you pretty much know right away, and as we get into more hybrid AI and you start to see auto-generated code and auto-interpreted code, those two things are starting to work with each other to say right in that moment, yeah, it works, let's give it a shot. Where I think it's going to create some issues is, the patterns of software engineering have been set, and those have largely not changed. The languages haven't changed that much over the years. And a big part of what a lot of commercial organizations are focused on are compilation times, build times, deployment times, and a lot of that has to do with dependencies. So depending on how the code is generated will also determine how much code has to be recompiled, redeployed, so on and so forth. And the 10-minute build, the elusive and illustrious 10-minute build can become a 30-minute build. And I don't think that right now AI has a good sense of that, but I think as we move into hybrid AI and we start to see different LMs solve different problems in different spaces, we will also see a solution to that.
So I agree on both counts. It's hard to imagine an AI architect that could solve those higher level problems as a code base becomes more complex.
Sure.
On the other hand, I think you're right as well that as things become more sophisticated in training, I don't think they're insolvable problems. But what does that mean then in terms of the organization? How do you see, do you see changes to, just in general, we've been running Agile for 20 years. Most practitioners, right? You can say the general statement, that's generally true. That's sort of the time frame. Do you see changes in how we're going to actually execute projects? Are we going to find different kinds of efficiencies? Are we going to understand business requirements differently and faster?
Oh, these are great questions. And remind me to go back to the PR question as well. I don't want to not answer your questions, but...
Well, it's in tandem with that, right? Because we're thinking now, I apologize for interrupting, but we're thinking about not just this space of, task to implement. We're thinking about the whole 9 yards, right? The ideation and maybe even creativity in terms of what is the product itself.
Yeah, I'm going to actually kind of plug my own thing here and talk to you a little bit about AI in business, because one of the things that I have the luxury. My software and our business is going to be about what's called hockey IQ. It's essentially the concept of building up a youth athlete, in this case a hockey player, but it could be any athlete, in terms of their ability to understand game-like scenarios. I had an idea in mind for a business to basically create a space for athletes at the younger ages, their parents and coaches to communicate to help them individually develop their hockey IQ. When I went out there, I had a really strong idea. This is a software we're going to build. I'm going to go out there, and I met a really good product marketer who said, you should understand if you have product market fit, because a lot of people are blinded by their sort of love and passion for what their idea is. And so I went out there. I've been interviewing hockey directors, coaches, all the way from the professional level in the NHL, all the way down to an assistant coach who's just starting at the 7-year-old and under level. And I'm asking them questions as generically as possible. Tell me your coaching process. How do you define hockey IQ? Can you teach it? Can you grow it? Does teams versus individuals get in the way? Those types of things. Where am I going with this? So what I found was, as I'm going through product market fit, I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to go hire product marketers to run these and do analysis and this. So I've been using different LLMs and feeding the data in from these conversations, which I just basically took and used AI like Otter to actually transcribe them, put them into and tag them in some way, and then fed them into a large language model. And my first question was, what business should I run? And it was shocking how many ideas ChatGPT came up with, which more or less confirmed some of the ideas that I was going after, but it created a lot of holes, and it found a lot of spaces that were like, you might consider this based on what 50 coaches have been saying, there's a real problem right here. Things that my brain couldn't come up with, things that probably, if I had asked 100 people, they might come up with. but maybe I wasn't hearing it because I was so set on my idea. ChatGPT doesn't care about your idea. LLMs don't care about your idea. They care about statistical trends, and it's a probabilistic model. So they're just basically saying, probability, here's your best chance at a business right here. And so from just a pure, how is it going to change the game? I think product, value, and vetting your ideas and understanding how and where you need to pivot, I think if it's not challenging you, you're losing.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's fascinating because, you think about stages of evolution, right? What did it take to start up an internet company in the year 2000? I can remember this. I don't know if you can. It took a pretty hefty investment, and you had to get your server, stand it up. It was all physical, and then you had to write it from the bottom up. Fast forward, we've lived through the boom of cloud computing, where you can stand something up, choose your cloud and have your website up and running very quickly, or you can just go to any e-commerce, third party. All of that accelerates how you can go from idea to business, right? So now it's like another inflection point where that idea to business is going to accelerate it even faster, because for the founder who doesn't have time to be a CMO, a CTO, a CEO, all these tasks, it's increasing productivity along the whole chain. That's what's fascinating to me, and it sounds like that's working for you.
100%. I would say, just to kind of comment and not to age myself a little. I mean, I worked for, I think I could say this, Sun Microsystems back in the day. So, they were the .com. They were behind all the startups. They were, Pets.com was built on Sun. Solaris was built on Sun. Sun's gone now, except save Java under Oracle. But I just started a business where I just went to a virtual private server hosting company, and $7 a month, my software's up and running. $7. I could scale that at, hundreds of dollars a month and be, very happy with the model of scale that I'll have in my first few years, versus an E10K at, Sun, which was $1 million to build a startup company. So I think just economies of scale and cloud technologies and Moore's Law, all of that is kind of coming into play. And artificial intelligence now is allowing the entrepreneur, the one-time founder, a guy like me, 25 years of software experience, leading it. I've built my own business. I have software development skills, and I played hockey for 20 years. All of those things are culminating into buy yourself a $7 a month server, get ChatGPT and Copilot on your side, and get some young junior developers, and let's see how far I can take this thing. And within 2 months, we have a site up, we have a demo platform running, and we're able to show that to potential buyers and say, is this interesting? And even if they're saying no, I know that in 2 months, not 2 years. And I know that for $1,000, not for $100,000.
De-risking the product validation and the product market fit being the biggest risk. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Coming up next, we discuss how to manage the hidden risks of AI in software development. Plus, we touch on the long-term impacts of AI on issues such as technical debt and the software development lifecycle. Stay tuned for more CTO to CTO. Welcome back to CTO to CTO, a podcast by Forte Group. I'm Lucas Hendrich, CTO at Forte Group, and I'm here with CJ Montano, CTO and founder of My Hockey IQ and board member at Forte Group.
A couple of things I want to talk about, because that's a very kind of utopian view, right? Yeah. You take a couple of attributes and you can throw them together and you're generating a business. What about those sort of like tail risks? Like you've introduced something insecure into your code base. You've used something that violates copyleft and now you've got a problem. So how are you thinking about those things with the use of LLMs? There's always that, we talk about hallucinations all the time. So how do you think about that? How do you de-risk that?
I haven't thought about it, honestly, to be honest with you, that much. Here's how I'll answer this question. I think there's a hype curve right now going on with AI. And I think that there's a lot of experimentation around how can this be useful for us. I'll draw back on my CTO experience or vice president experience when I was running software departments and there was a lot more people. When I think of things like non-functional requirements like information security or quality, I don't know where AI fits there yet, but I know this. Nobody cares about those things until they have to, right? Nobody cares about information security until they have a breach, and then it's the most important thing. Nobody cares about the quality of the software until they release and nobody can use it or the site is down for an hour or 2 hours or a week. So I don't know if I'm directly answering your question here, but I do think that, again, if you're not embracing this technology, whether you're using, package managers to understand how far back you are on a version of the package of the software you're using, or whether you're understanding how many times that package is referenced, or how many pieces of software using that package that has been breached, which is all the space of AI, I think that you're not doing diligence in that space. I am not a DevOps person. I'm not an information security person. But I think that when we talk about hybrid AI, we're seeing AI emerge in every single field. So what we can't do is we can't say, I'm generating more code. I'm generating higher quality code. Juniors can generate code better than they ever have. So information security and quality is not a problem anymore. That's just silliness, because the sheer amount of code that we're generating. I'll take a step back here. One of the things that I'm hoping to talk about a little bit is AI has been positioned as a cost reduction technique and an acceleration of code technique, meaning we could do more with less. We could take 100 developers and reduce them down to 20 developers and produce the same amount of code. I think that is the most short-sighted thing we're going to see, and I think that there's going to be a big boon in jobs and creation of jobs within the next 2 years, because software has never been about reducing cost, ever. The companies that get ahead, look at OpenAI itself. They're burning billions of dollars, and they have the real first chance of being $1 trillion valuation, and they're not doing that by hiring less developers. They're doing that by hiring more. And I think the folks, the organizations that are going to get it right are the ones that are recognizing more developers building better code means we're going to be more innovative, which means we're going to beat our competition.
I think
not let's do the same with less people.
It's very interesting in almost economic terms. It's like you can have a scarcity point of view, supply side or demand side. I think the contribution to total factor productivity is going to be so huge. I totally agree. And I think there's a confusion too, that there's very little replacing going on. You say hybrid, and I think what I understand from that is that we're just using another tool. Our tool's getting more sophisticated. In this case, it's language based, right? So if it's easier for me to write pseudocode to generate code, I'm just going to generate code faster, as you say. There'll be risks of quality either way I do it. Mm-hmm. It's another layer of abstraction. Exactly. It's funny. I was thinking about this. I was listening to a panel discussion about the risks of AI. And that's why I asked the question, because I feel like there's kind of something short-sighted in that conversation as well. And I felt like we could be saying the same things about Excel 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. How many businesses are still running on Excel spreadsheets that aren't secure, that there have been huge decimal point errors costing millions of dollars because of dependence on Excel spreadsheets? And I think about that, and I think about my kids doing their homework with ChatGPT. It's becoming ubiquitous. So I don't think the risk is in AI somehow becoming more intelligent than us. I think we just need to be mindful of how we're using this tool in such a global way, because it's going to generate a different kind of, and it's not apples to apples here, but a different kind of technical debt. a different kind of dependency, a different thing to manage in the software development lifecycle.
Technical debt that we will have AI to help solve, though, too. So
correct.
You can't forget that. I mean, I think thinking of AI as a way to reduce costs is a little bit like how traditional, and I'm talking back in the 90s, organizations used to think about copywriting their software. Nobody does it anymore because everyone just build code faster and be more innovative and they'll never catch up. And I think the VC world was built on this concept, just build more, just be more innovative, do new things.
Linux is more secure than Windows.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if I should be saying that, but I think that's a commonly held belief.
Exactly. So to me, I really believe that, and maybe just kind of taking a step back and I'm a very practical sort of person. I believe in sort of the human condition, and humans are behind all of this, and I believe in what is in the hype curve. We're sort of overlaying multiple hype curves within the same discipline of AI right now. The generative hype curve is already passed, and it's starting to get into that practical phase of how can I adopt it to use it. And I love that part of the hype curve. To me, that's like, I'm not somebody who is on the initial, curve of like, oh, I got to build this whole thing, and we got to talk AI, and I'm going to change the world. I like when it starts to become solidified and we start to find its space, and then really using it and being productive with it. But I think that, when you think about the hype curve for AI and sort of adopting things, I do believe that we're in a place right now where we don't have to be so freaked out by what is next, right? Is it symbolic? Is it we're going to take it, because LLMs are based off of textual data, and it's, you're taking all of this data and you're saying, okay, what can it generate conversationally? Once you start taking in images and videos and it starts to get more contextual, we might actually start to see a little bit more true intelligence than what we can basically get, because the LLMs, they spend, what is it? You live in New York City, isn't it? Like a month of New York City electricity to retrain on the current LLM data. So when we start to get into this space of the next hype curve of bringing in symbolic AI, I think that's going to change the world in a different way. But I'm more practical, so I'm saying we have ChatGPT, we have Copilot, we have AWS Whisper, we have DALL-E, and even Canva, and we could take those different GPTs or models, and we can use them in a hybrid way. And that's what I'm most excited about. It's like taking the legal industry to say, okay, let's take all of these documents that are responsive, and let's use AI to determine which ones need to be responsive documents for particular litigation or matter, and then let's feed that into some other rules-based engine, and then let's take what comes out of that and feed it back into ChatGPT and say, help me understand contextually what's going on here. And we could take 3 different models that are trained on different data, and we could get various different insights. I don't think we have to be so concerned about where is the world going in AI, and being more, what do we have right now, and how do we take those different large language models, put them in a hybrid sense, and use them to sort of exponentially increase our value. And that's what I'm excited about right now.
No, me too. I think these are the tougher questions. Again, we've been building software in a relatively similar way for the past 20 years. Mm-hmm. It was being built similarly. You could go back, to even further, but it's just the process of inception to creating some kind of requirement, that's become more efficient. We shift left with our testing. Yep. We shift left to be able to get to production and get to market faster. I feel like we don't really know how this is going to impact the software development lifecycle yet. It's hard to have best practices around this yet, because the ground feels like it's shifting so quickly. Just with every new version of a model coming out, and what do you choose? Is there a big difference? What's the differentiator in what we do, practically speaking, every day? How do you think about that? Are you patient to kind of sit it out and just use what you can in the meantime, or?
Yeah, so I'll take the approach of more of like, sort of the arc that an athlete might have, and this is near and dear to my heart, is I say this, anybody who knows me knows this, but I'll say this all the time, like slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You need to practice things slowly and become experts in them before you could move faster. Otherwise, you just become good at what you practice. If you practice the wrong way, you'll become good at that. And those become, in the software world, anti-patterns. In the world of sports, they just become bad behaviors, things that have to be unlearned. So again, I take it from the perspective of take it slow, right? The thing that I think will happen here, though, is because, like you said, the world of software has been kind of designed and built a certain way. We have Agile. We have 2-week cycles. We have DevOps engineers. We have developers. We have test automation engineers. They all have their own industries and their own disciplines. When I say take it slow, I don't mean let's start with code generating tools. Let's not do anything in automation or DevOps. No, allow those experts who have done it slow and become fast at it to experiment with AI and LLMs in their own field and in their own discipline and kind of tie those two things together. You've delivered the code. You've tested the code. You have deployed the code. We all use various different LLMs and tools to actually do that, put in the hands of an expert. I think that's perfectly fine. To me, we could then emerge this in the way that you had said, which is we don't really know how this is going to change. But just start. Just learn. Just start deploying technology with command line, Linux-based, your ZSH, shell-based AI to deploy code using, for Kubernetes or containers or whatever. And let's see how far that goes. And let's allow that cycle to emerge. That's where we're at in the hype cycle right now, is adaptation, adoption of these LLMs right now. Let's not try to figure out, there's one system to rule them all, and these are how these things are going to work together. Let's allow the experts to just go through these fields, see what becomes commonplace, and then we'll start to integrate them.
So what that sounds like is, and again, going back to the software development lifecycle, the roles on a Scrum team, It sounds as though each one of those roles is kind of going to have its own model that'll be expertly trained for that role. So maybe the software developer in 10 years from now will be a software orchestrator.
Yep.
Or a business integrator.
Yeah, think of companies, and I'm not going to name drop too much. It's a great company out there that does software automation of testing. And this is a service that they do. They have hundreds of companies that all they do is write code in Selenium or Playwright. And think about training on their models. And now think about you hiring a test automation person and saying, extend the pattern at our company. Well, you're not going to have nearly the advantage of going to a company like that and saying, use AI to auto-generate automated tests for us, because you're trained on hundreds of companies and millions of lines of code. I'm trained on just this one. So to me, I think we haven't even seen the effects of that because those companies haven't had the ability or maybe the legal sort of risk and endeavor to go out there and actually do that because they might be concerned or their clients might be concerned about that kind of data, sharing or using that kind of data. But I think that we've yet to see that, and the technology is already there. The technology is already there. So whether it's a role on a team and it's a person saying, I am going to be the expert and I'm going to learn this, like what is the LMM you are going to choose? Where's the data going to be trained? And is that going to be based on a big, broad context of here's the generally accepted pattern in test automation and Playwright for the vertical SaaS company in this industry solving this type of problem? That's a pretty big advantage versus bringing in even an expert and being like, build test automation foundations. Yeah. And now I'm gonna plug Forte a little bit because this is what Forte does, right? I mean, you're talking about an organization with 1,000 engineers in it who have access to a lot of different data, which outside of the legal ramifications of that can be incredibly powerful to say, whether I'm generating code, deploying code, or testing code, not only do we have the collective conscience of 1,000 engineers using AI, but we also have the data. We can, I know we don't, we can have the data trained on all of these, on all of these clients that we have.
Yeah, no, essentially, I mean, this is the over-the-top value that a company like Forte should provide, which is you're not just accessing one brain, you're accessing
Exactly.
1,000, and that's how I think about LLMs in a lot of ways too. I don't want to plug too much on Forte, but just to kind of take the thought a step further. So what we're thinking about is, in order to do that effectively, now data itself is becoming the problem to solve. And what I mean by that is in the broader market, if you don't have the right data to train your models, or if it's hard to ingest that data, have that flow throughout an organization, that we're seeing that there's a lot of data debt out there to be solved. What I'm curious about is in your product itself, because now you're the chief product officer as well.
Yep.
It sounds like you're sprinkling AI into it. Mm-hmm. Are you thinking about data as an asset to train models? You think about user adoption. You need to get as much as possible and just start getting transactions through, and building up that transactional database, and then you're going to, do some analysis on that. That's your asset. And there's some aggregation that's going to happen, and then maybe you can sell that data. But now there's an aftermarket for all kinds of data, which is training models. Are you thinking about that?
Slightly. I would say that yes. And here's why I don't think about it that much. It's too exciting. Right now, again, I'm such a pragmatic guy, and we're trying to get to a place where we're MVP and we have things. But essentially at the core of what we do is we're helping youth athletes, and again, at the younger ages, their parents participate in their growth, right? How can I participate in my own growth if I am not an expert and my parent is certainly not an expert? Traditionally, that has just been a coach telling you, and what you can glean, you could glean. And, some coaches will say that, like, some kids will just get it. I know it when I see it, and some kids won't, and those kids will move on. And then you have this effect of kids who kind of get it, more investment is made in them, and then they get more time, and then they become better because they just follow that pattern. There's a name for it. I can't think of it right now. But I think that when I think of taking control of even my own development as an athlete, what made me a good hockey player was my own love, my own curiosity. It wasn't really a coach. It was, I'm going to go in and shoot a puck a certain way in my garage with, 1,000 times. And unfortunately, my dad was very good with building things, and he built me like a steel hockey puck, so I had to shoot a steel hockey puck 100 times. But yes, it's the same concept of, like, I had a good shot. I could do things that other kids couldn't do on the ice because I did that. But when I think about data, how can we help the kids or athletes know more about who they are? Well, you have to give them a lot of data, which is going to be coming from the coaches or what they watch on television or what is prescribed to them in a video, or they go to a camp or an assistant coach whispers to them in their ear. All of that is just data, audio, image, whatever data it is. And if we could start to glean trends out of that, now we could start making recommendations and saying, here's what coaches keep telling you, and here's what you keep struggling with. And we start to get into computer vision and tendency analysis of sports. We could say, this is your instincts on the ice. This is bad. You should be going to this camp. By the way, there's 3 experts in your area. Here's their prices. Here's when they have their next thing. So of course we're thinking about that. It's so exciting that it's not worth thinking about right now, because right now we're creating the condition. We're creating the space for that to occur, and then we'll start getting into that. It is a very exciting area. But again, I'm so practical. I'm like, let's use what AI gives to us today.
Well, and you need to get the data first before you can start
exactly.
having a hypothesis, which actually made me think too, about your comment about, what is it really good at? It's really good at synthesizing and getting insights that you would not normally get. So I'm
because of your own bias.
Hearing you say this, and I'm thinking, there's a jiu-jitsu practitioner. His name is John Danaher. That very, very well known in the community. And he talks about, you can practice all these techniques, but you're going to have a natural, if there's one technique that you're just intuitive with, you're going to have an edge with that technique, and that's what you need to exploit. So it's kind of the 20-80 principle. That's where you need to double down. So it'd be really cool, to think about in terms of hockey. I don't know hockey at all, but I'm sure there's different, attributes of players that align with some technique that's going to give them a higher percentage of something. And to have that information at a point where someone can really practice that is going to be really interesting as an advantage.
I mean, the investment community has known this forever. Invest in your winners, drop your losers.
Right.
It's the truth. Like, diversity isn't the way to success and wealth. Everyone who is wealthy knows that. It's find what you're good at, invest in that, double down, and keep moving in that direction. Diversity helps to explore and find what you're good at and what you're not good at. But to continually invest in things that aren't working for you, that's just madness.
Yeah.
That's the same in hockey, and that's where you get flavors. Oh, this kid's really fast. So that's how I was. I was a really fast hockey player. So they just ended up being, let's double down on that. And that became my thing. But let's take it back to tech. Think about this from the perspective of the Agile team or the development team. What do we know and not know about the Agile team today that we're just not getting, the benefit from? And this is where I'm really interested in the space of space, Dora, DevX, DX. What is your team productivity? What is your team happiness? What is your team motivation? What are they good at? Where do they focus on? And there is a silent movement behind the scenes. It wasn't so silent, but AI kind of masked it. But there's the not so silent movement going on in this space around developer experience where you can actually, and I know Forte is going down this path of measuring not just developer productivity, because that can be a little bit tough, but really developer value, efficiency. How good are they at creating outcomes aligned to value and what a product is building? Those things, because of the frameworks that Space and Dora and DevX are now creating, now you're going to generate more and more data in these tools that allow that. I know you're using one of them. I use one of them. They're different ones. But that's more data.
Yeah.
That's more data that could then be run through some of these LLMs that are trained to say, this team is really good at this, and you could continue to force them down this path. You could try to train them. You can fire them and try to replace them. Or maybe your company is what you thought it was. It's a collection of the assets, the human minds that you have in it, and you should start going the direction of what your actual assets are, right? And that, I think we might start to see businesses emerge right out of that. Forget about who we want to be. Who does our company have? What should we be? And that, I think AI is going to help create some interesting spaces for.
I agree. I think that's a great way to wrap this up.
Okay.
It's been just wonderful talking to you, CJ. This is
a
ton of fun. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think other than just, my big thing around AI and having a conversation with you, being on the board of Forte, I think when we, Forte, myself, you, Mikhail, Steve, the big influencers, Lee Barnes, when we think of this, we think of it as, what can we do right now? What is the practical use of both acceleration, improvement of quality, and creating the learning environment for engineers to actually move forward our clients, our organization's clients, and even ourselves as an organization. And I wanted to plug Forte on this because I think of many service firms, Forte is very sort of practical about the way they do things. They measure where they are, they try to experiment, and then they improve on that. And I think AI in this sort of DevX space has given you guys a really nice position to say, we are not just somebody who is blasting out AI everywhere just to get people attracted. We're actually using it in a pragmatic way and measuring our success. And in a partner, I know I'm a board member, so I'm biased. I will certainly and am using Forte services because of that. I think it's a very practical use. And I think more companies need to be thinking about that. Stop dreaming and start doing what practical AI is giving us today. I think Forte does it well.
I couldn't have said it any better. Very generous. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
So thank you so much for listening to our podcast or watching if you're seeing this. It's been a lot of fun. We're going to have another exciting conversation coming up soon with someone from the private equity community. And I think it's going to be, very insightful as well. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to the CTO2CTO podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We'd love to hear your feedback, so leave us a review as well. Keep exploring and innovating. See you next time.